Shalom Aleichem to everyone on TorahAnytime.com. I'm going to tell you a fusion of two different parables, one of which is based on something I heard from Rabbi Zechariah Wallerstein, and one of them is based on the Ben Ish Chaim. Chaim Bernstein, father and grandfather, dies at the ripe old age of 94. He goes up to Shemayim, and the Beit Din Shel Mala, the heavenly court, are showing him the film of his life. Now, of course, this film is an epic. It starts from the beginning of Chaim's life and ends at the end. And as he's watching the film, he notices one part where he is aged 14. So it's 80 years prior to his death. He's watching this part of the film, and this 14-year-old boy called Chaim is walking down the street. And as he's walking down the high street, Chaim, who's watching this film play out, starts to get very nervous as he's watching the film, because he's remembering that street, and he remembers what he did when he was age 14. And as the film is playing and he's walking further and further down the street, he gets more and more nervous as he's watching, and he's getting more and more embarrassed. And he starts breaking out in a sweat, and he wants the film to stop. He wants to break the screen. He wants to stop the projection. And I'm going to stop the story at this point. I'm going to tell you the mashal, the parable from the Ben Ish Chai, as I leave you to think about the first part of the story. So the story that the Ben Ish Chai tells is as follows. There was a king who was very beloved by all his subjects. And this king had many ministers, but he had two very special ministers who he trusted over and above all his other ministers in his government. And these ministers in turn loved the king, and the king loved the two ministers. Now, one of these ministers started thinking to himself, however much I'm happy with my job, I don't feel that I'm valued. I don't feel I'm being paid enough for doing what I do. And the more he started thinking in this way, he started getting strange ideas. And he thought to himself, I need the king to give me much more than he's giving me now. Now, the king had a treasure house. This treasury made Fort Knox look like a walk in the park. It was guarded day and night. It had the latest technology. It had thick steel doors. And housed inside this treasury was an incredible storehouse full of jewels, gold, silver, riches like you can never imagine. And this minister says to himself, I'm going to break into that treasury, and I'm going to do it in a way that I will never be detected. So what does he do? He goes back to his own chamber, which is in the grounds of the king's palace. He burrows a hole in his own floor, deep, deep down in the ground, burrows then straight across all the way, and he's got a map. He knows he's got some type of GPS, and he works out exactly where the underneath of the treasury is. He gets to the right point, then he burrows up, until, as he's digging, he feels tick, tick, tick. He knows that he's hit a tile, something that's not earth. He knows he's directly underneath the treasury. So he lifts up the tile and he looks up. He sticks his head up out the ground, just like a mole, and he looks dead ahead, and he's shocked at what he sees. He sees there are 2 armed guards with guns leveled at his head. And they're looking at this minister. And of course, these 2 guards recognize the minister. And they say, "Minister, what on earth are you doing here?" And at this point, the minister realizes that he's got his GPS all wrong. He's actually dug up in the corridor just outside the treasure house, right into the arms of all the security. And of course, they cart him away, and the king hears about it, and he throws him in the dungeon, awaiting trial. Now, over to the other minister. This other minister independently has the same thoughts. And he thinks, you know what? I'm going to go back to my chamber. I'm going to burrow down and through and up, exactly the same as the other minister. However, this second minister has a much more accurate GPS. Perhaps he was using Waze. And when he hits his shovel underneath the ground and he hears tick, 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 and he's got the tile and he lifts it up, well, lo and behold, he's hit the jackpot. And now, ever so quietly, he goes up and he's inside the treasure house, and he cannot believe it. He is absolutely gobsmacked. He'd heard about this treasure, but he never imagined in his wildest dreams what this looked like, what this was worth. And he had a big swag bag with him, a big Hessian bag like the robbers have. And he filled it with whatever he could quickly, chick-chack, gold, jewels, anything. And he goes down in the hole, he puts that tile on top of him, and it's like he's never been there. And he's quickly burrowing down, racing down in this tunnel back towards his own residence. As he's going through, he thinks to himself, what on earth have I just done? I've just ripped off the king. How could I do such a thing? I mean, this is the king. This is my benefactor. He gives me so much. He's given me my own rooms in the palace grounds. He looks after me, my family, everybody. Okay, maybe he doesn't pay me so much. But how can I do this? And then he thinks to himself, nah, come on. You've got the jewels. Yalla, let's go back. And then the other voice inside said, no, you know what? This is wrong. This is so wrong. And with that, he finally wins over his Yetzer Hara and he turns back. Goes back up the tunnel, up to where the tile is, removes the tile, takes the bag of all the loot. He puts every single valuable back exactly where he found it. And he goes back down and he rushes back to his residence. Now the next day, the guards are doing a routine check. And every day this happens, the same thing. They go into the room where the jewels are, they see everything the same, they go out. This time, one of the guards walks around the room and he notices as he's walking that one of the tiles is loose. And he gets a bit suspicious. And he trusts his instincts and he removes the tile, and would you believe it? There's a tunnel there. He follows the tunnel all the way through until it leads to the house of that minister. And again, this minister is carted off and thrown in prison. Now, the trial happens, And the first minister who had made an error in judgment and got caught, he gets life in prison. The other minister who had all the jewels with him and he turned back and put them all back, he gets not only a pardon from the king, but the king promotes him to become the chief minister. Now he takes over and becomes the chief minister bar none. He's the most trusted in the kingdom next to the king himself. Why did that happen? The king explained himself. The king said to the minister, "You wanted to steal from me, but then you had this regret and you couldn't live with yourself. So you quickly righted the wrong that you'd committed. And that to me means so much, because you felt such a love for me that you couldn't live with yourself if you had committed this crime. And therefore, not only will I pardon you, I will give you an even higher position." Now, bearing this in mind, let's go back to our story about Chaim. He's still watching this film. He's sweating now. He knows what's going to happen next. Because what does he remember? He remembers when he was 14 years old, 13, 14, he went through a phase where he would go and buy a cheeseburger. And he would eat that cheeseburger. And of course he knew it was treif. He knew it wasn't kosher. He knew it was a sin. But he did it anyway, even though he was from a frum family. And as he's watching this film, after his, during his trial, he was so nervous that everybody in that courtroom, in that heavenly courtroom, will watch and see the sin he was about to do. And he sees himself turning into a shop. But it isn't the burger bar that he remembers. He turns into Grudzinski's, which, if you're from America, is a famous kosher bakery in the UK. He goes into Grudzinski's and he picks up a chocolate croissant and he goes home, and all this is playing out on the film as he's watching in shock and horror. He doesn't remember this. And he goes home, he makes a brocha, mazonos, he eats it, he even makes an after brocha. Meanwhile, the Soton is watching this whole film, and the Soton says, "Objection! I was there. I was there when Chaim went into the burger bar and he bought a cheeseburger, a double cheeseburger noch, and he downed it in one go. What is all this? Somebody's been tampering with his film." "No," said the defense of Chaim. "That's not what happened. You can see for yourself. This man didn't do a sin. In fact, he did a mitzvah." How do we understand this? Because Chaim, after doing this sin quite a few times, when he was 13, 14 years old, he had finally done teshuvah. He had finally stopped the sin. He felt regret. He said, "How can I do this to you, Hashem? I never want to do this sin again." And he verbalized his sin. That's called vidui. And he had azivat hachet. He stopped the sin. And of course, he had charata, he had regret. And his teshuvah was such, it was out of love for God, love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you know what happens? When you do teshuvah, and it's out of love for God, not only does God erase the sin, that's only part of the benefit. He turns the sin into a mitzvah. How can that be? Who can do that other than the Ribono Shel Olam? And that's exactly what happened. Because in heaven, they edited that film. They changed everything. They cut, they pasted, and now the sin didn't exist. It was a mitzvah in its place. Even the Satan was shocked beyond belief. And that is the essence of teshuvah me'ahava. That is a high level of teshuvah. Doing teshuvah from fear of God is a high level, but it's not the ultimate level. What we have to do, as my very good friend Jacques Cadranel told me just a couple of days ago, he said he heard from his Rav Menachem Yunik from Lubavitch in Hendon. He told him, our job on Yom Kippur, on these holy days, is not to start asking Hashem and start negotiating. Hashem, I'm going to do this good thing, that good thing, but do this for me. I want this, I want this, I want that. Stop the negotiations. You have to make yourself bitul, mevatel. You have to nullify yourself. Say, Hashem, I don't want anything from you. I just want to give to you. So you know what my friend Jacques said to me? He said, our job is to take a crown and put it on HaKadosh Baruch Hu's head, as it were. Take a crown and crown Hashem. That's what you have to do. Don't ask for anything. Nullify yourself. Don't worry about what Hashem can give you. Crown Hashem. Make Hashem your king. Feel such a love of Hashem that it's pasnish for you to do a sin. It's beneath you to do a sin. How could you do that? How could I do that to my God? And in this way, all of us will be shocked after 120 years when all those aveirot that weighed us down and gave us atzvut, gave us depression, they will be transformed into mitzvot of the highest caliber. Be'ezrat Hashem, all of us, if we have any sins, they should all be turned into mitzvot with the love of Hashem. And we will all dance and sing and scream, Hashem Melech, Hashem Melech, Hashem Yinoch L'Oved. Not just with ourselves, but with Mashiach Tzidkenu in the Binyan Ariel. And we should see it b'chush and in reality this year without any further pain. Tizkeh l'shanim tovot rabot v'neimot. Have a good year and ktiva v'chatima tova.